Hi, Powerful Questions Coaching listeners. This is Diane. I'm coming to you live today to talk to you about grief. I have requested that people give me things that they would like to discuss, and that was one of the things that somebody wanted information on. So grief is a difficult one because people handle it differently. For grief, there is 5 stages that we all go through. We don't go through them in the same order. We can go through it and come back to it, so it changes. So the 5 stages of grief are denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance. So we go through those stages, not necessarily in order, and we can come back to them and visit them again. We can get stuck in a stage, which is kind of one of the problems too, is we can get stuck in a stage and not be able to get ourselves out. And we might need to see someone to get some help to get ourselves out of maybe the depression stage. We can also go through those stages and then years later come back and have to grieve it again. So one of the things in our society that we do is instead of grieving something, we often stuff it and we become workaholics or alcoholics or turn to food or shopping. And the problem with that is, well, there's lots of problems with that. But the big problem is then when something else happens and we haven't grieved the first thing, then the grief for the second item or the third item is much bigger because we're also grieving for all the things that we didn't grieve in the past. So if we don't grieve for something that happens, then what can happen is it builds up, and then when we do grieve, it seems like it's much bigger than it should have been because we're grieving for all these other things that have happened. So what I suggest is starting to work on the grief when something happens. So I have a lot of parents that come to me and they say, I just want my child back the way they were. Or I have clients who come and say, I want to be like I was. Well, we change when something happens. So I have a daughter with Down syndrome. She's now 10. When she was born, I had to go through a grieving process. She's perfect the way she is. She's the way God made her. But I had to grieve for the child that I thought I would have that I didn't, and that what my life now looks like. We had to make a lot of changes to get her what she needed. So I had the job that carried insurance, so I had to stay at my job to keep insurance, but my husband had to sell a lot of his landscaping business so that he could be home and do her therapies. So we had to make a lot of accommodations, and we don't regret it at all, but it was a lot of grieving for what we didn't expect. We didn't know that our life would look like that. So we had to grieve the changes that we weren't planning on. So grieving is just for anything that comes up. So a change in jobs, a move, a child who may be doing things that you didn't think they would. A lot of the parents that come to me, their children are cutting or starting to cut on themselves, and the parents are saying, I want my old child back. Your child's not going to be the same. So there's a new you, or new child, a new situation, but you aren't going to go back to the same person. I am not going to go back to the person I was prior to having my daughter. I'm just not. I'm changed. I'm a parent. I'm a parent with a child with special needs, which means I have to do a lot of extra things to get her what she needs. Not a bad thing. I've grown a ton. That child has made me grow and learn more than anybody else. So I'm not wanting it to be different, but I have definitely changed, and I'm not going to go back to the same person. So grief is something we all go through. Nobody gets through life without having to grieve or having to deal with losses, and that would be a grief. So things like job injuries, things that you can't do anymore. Some people grieve getting older, and that's a real thing. I mean, if you get older, sometimes we can't do what we used to be able to do. We lose the looks we used to have. So it's something to grieve. Now for me, getting older also means having confidence I never had before, understanding myself like I never would have when I was younger. Now I do grieve the loss of the energy that I used to have. That is definitely different. I used to work crazy hours and I had the energy to do it. I don't now. So definitely my energy has changed, and sometimes I grieve that. I'm like, I wish I had the energy that I did when I was younger. But grief is a real thing, and we need to lean into it and respect it and honor it. So by leaning into it, I mean, like, instead of resisting and trying to push it away and I can't deal with this and I don't want to feel this, leaning into it and saying, how can I grow from this? What is the learning experience I can embrace from this? It's hard. I had a situation just a month or so ago. Wasn't sleeping for 4 nights in a row pretty much. Stressed about it. And it's hard to lean into it. But what I kept telling myself is, what's my lesson here? What do I need to get from this? How can I grow from this? Because I was getting stuck in the whys and what am I doing and questioning myself. And that's normal. But I had to lean into that and say, this is normal. It's a normal grief process. It's a normal surrender to it, embrace it, and allow it to let me learn what I can from it. So that's what I would suggest when you're dealing with grief from a job loss, from a transition, from a child who's changed on you and you're wanting your old child back. Learning to lean into it and saying, okay, how can I support this person or myself in this change? Being self-compassionate. How can I talk to myself kindly? How can I care for myself? I'm going to do a session on self-compassion, and that would be grief is when you use self-compassion. When I'm grieving about something, how can I be self-compassionate? How can I talk to myself like a best friend? How can I be kind and gentle? And then the shared experience. All humans grieve. Now, the problem can be on Facebook, we see everybody and they're all beautiful and happy and everything looks wonderful. And we're like, they don't experience what I experience in life. They do. You just don't see it. So one of the things to remember is it's a shared human experience. Everybody experiences this. So don't allow yourself to go to, I'm the only one. Nobody else seems to experience what I am. We all experience it. Try to lean into it, embrace it. Find what you need to learn from it. The more you resist it, I don't know if you guys have heard, the more you resist, it will persist. When you resist something, it persists and it keeps coming back. And it starts to kind of haunt us if we don't lean into it. So it's kind of like that thing where you think, I'm not going to think about it, I'm not going to think about it, don't think about it, don't think about it. The more you don't think about it or try not to think about it, the more you think about it. So allowing yourself to think about it, embrace it, and be with it. So those are my suggestions to help you with grief. Everybody goes through it. If you start talking to people, make sure they're safe people. But if you start talking to people, you'll start hearing about their experience with grief and that they made it through. And sometimes that can be helpful to see that other people have gotten through it too. So thank you. I hope this is helpful. Please give me some feedback on topics you would like to hear and things that you find helpful and maybe would like more information on. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Diane with Powerful Questions Coaching, and I'm working on a series, Emotional Hygiene. So anything that has to do with emotional hygiene, ask and I'll see if I can cover it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.